Hey, and welcome back to day 8. So today we're going to check out whether we got the Rialo integration to work and also whether we got the menu such that we can exit the game and go and change settings. So let's jump right into it. So as you'll see, once again, I've managed to crash my coding editor here, or my agent. So I certainly have some work that I need to do on this agent system. But let's go ahead and just try to start this up and see what happens. So if I just do run Oasis server, we get the server up running. Now go over here and say cargo run dash bin. Let's see what happens. That was the Oasis engine. See, I don't see anything anywhere. Oh, there it is. Let me move that over here. So this looks a little bit weird. If you look here, what has happened? It seems that it has moved our platform down below the surface. We can still pick up stuff. Let's check the menu first. So we now have a menu. We can join game. There are no servers. So there we should have some auto discovery or the possibility of entering an IP address. And settings is also empty, but the menu works. And then the next question is, do our wallet work? So for that, we have a hotkey B. And if you see here, it now comes up with a wallet. And we can request an airdrop. We really need to do something about the UI because this is not very intuitive. You can't see that you pressed anything. But here, I got one Rialo coin on my account. And I can request an airdrop again. This is running against the DevNet. And we now have in-game coin that we can use. So the only thing is we have no possibility of sending this to anybody else, which seems like something we would want to have. And actually thinking about it, ideally, we would want it so we could meet other players in the game and then just give them coin. Right, so we should have a transfer button here that should be available whenever we are near somebody. And that's probably what we should do today. That, and then maybe getting the platform back up, because this is a little bit annoying. I mean, we can still move around in the game, but we are clearly below ground here. See, can I jump out? No, I can't even jump out because this constitutes a barrier. So we can't jump through that. But hey, we got coin now in this game, and we can use that. So we are actually getting a whole lot closer to where we want to be, right? Because what we have here is the first steps towards being able to do in-game payments and do such things as video streams where you're paying. So imagine this. You have this server that's communicating between two people. They set up a video stream as we talked about last time. And now the question is, what is the incentive for the server to actually maintain this video stream? And so one really cool idea that would be to set up a Lightning type protocol where the server aggregates the data feeds and then takes a fee that's settled on the fly for every frame or every 10 frame or however often it needs to settle. I think this could be a really cool feature to implement and something that can be used for a lot of other things within the game. So I think that this is something we definitely need to work on. Now let's jump back to our coding editor here. I'm just going to restart that one because this looks horrible. Okay. Let's see. Could you carefully study the product on the work that was done so far? So it should be able to catch up with everything we've done because everything is well documented in this ACE framework. We're just going to leave it to do that. And then in the meantime, let's commit the changes we have because I'm quite happy with this. Let's just see. Okay. And then in the meantime, it is reading a bunch of things here. I wonder, does it actually use... Oh yeah, you can see here, it reads the features that we have and just gets completely up to speed with what the project is about. So this is one of the great reasons why we need to have a really well-documented project, such that whenever anything ends up crashing, we can recreate a session that has all of the information we need. And so if you remember here, we have this very, very comprehensive tree of epics and features and all of this. And so this is the prototype of the ACE framework in an agent version. So normally I teach people how to do accurate prompting and then how to chain them and how to evaluate that the LLM did what it should. This is the old way of how we would do it when we just did LLMs. Now the new way is using the same framework but with agents. And so this is basically what we're testing here. How well does this work with agents? And so far, we've had some pretty good results. The other thing that we want to implement longer term is, so we did this journalist that could talk about or talk with you and interview you. And so we need to work out a good structure for NPCs and then build up a NPC that can actually talk to you via a voice interface. I think that's going to be super cool. We need to put a bit of thought into the architecture, and maybe we need to use the agent for brainstorming this. We'll see. I'll still leave this a little bit. I want to have a slightly better version of this ACE framework before we jump into that, because this seems like something that requires a little bit more rigor than what we've been doing so far. So I think for today, what we will do is we'll just make the requirements for being able to send funds to another player. This should be relatively straightforward. And right, let's see. So you see here, it basically has a really good understanding of what we're doing. So we're using Bevy, it's using physics. It has something about what terrain and things like this. What does the networking look like? So we're using a custom UDP protocol. That might not be the most solid thing to do. We probably want to change that. And it also realizes that we have blockchain integration. We support scripting. It's disabled for now. And the reason for that was that this was, as if I recall correctly, this was conflicting with Yarnspinner, or no, there was Yarnspinner that conflicted. Why is the script disabled? It really shouldn't be. Temporary disabled. Oh, that's because it needs an older version of Bevy, and we need the version 0.18. Okay, so it might be that we have to take that scripting engine out and then, yeah, do something else. Maybe we could integrate some Wasmer stuff or something like that. But one of the cool things here now, did you notice? All I did was to ask it to study the project, and it's a fairly complex project at this point. But because of all the documentation we have, it has a really good understanding of what was done, and it's capable of articulating that in such a way that we can move on with things. I think that's really cool, and I'm completely convinced that we will only get to see more of this in 2026. It's definitely. Oh wait, what is there? It's definitely a thing that makes that you can feel a lot more certain that it will not wander off on some tangent just because you said something wrong, because it has all of this documentation that surrounds what we're doing that supports its decision making. Okay, now let's get on with the next feature. Let's see if it figures out that it needs to use the ACE framework without that we actually explicitly tells it. This is one of the issues that I've found with MCP servers. It's not always that the agent actually figures out how to use the functionality correctly, and sometimes it's super expensive in terms of tokens as well. So this is some of the stuff that's on the roadmap for this year to make a more efficient version of this. Cool. And so it now creates the feature, and it will now start asking us questions about how this should work. So you know the process by now. We've done this 3 or 4 times, but basically whenever we ask it to create a new feature, it'll start interviewing us about what is this feature supposed to do and how is it supposed to work. And with all of that information, it creates a comprehensive list of documents that will inform the development work we're doing later on. Yes, we want, yes, both regular players and NCPs need to be able to receive fund. Okay, let's see, next question. How should the... So I think we're going to do this on the basis of proximity. Okay, and so the idea here is that when you meet somebody in the game, that is what will allow you to get their address, but then we want it so you can save their address for later on and send the money at that point. What distance threshold trigger? And should this happen automatically when the players are close? Okay, so I think what we need here is that they should be close. Similar distance to how you interact with other objects. So then discover the address you would need to open the wallet and then press near by wallet people NCPs to get a list. Example name only. Actually, I think for the I think we want to show primarily name and then with the address in a smaller font. Oh, that was too many questions. So what happens next? Okay, so for instance, select recipient, enter amount, confirm, or should it be like let's go with flow 1, but also add the possibility of adding a memo. Actually, this reminds me that we need P2P messaging. One, no, any amount goes. To check that we can send. Yes, free. Any transaction fees to display for the account. Yes, show the gas fee or no. What happens when an error transaction on the blockchain network is your reserve? I mean, just use common sense. Why do I need to answer this? Okay, so I guess I should answer this. Should failed transaction be retried automatically or shown as an error? Okay. If the transaction is valid, retry up to 3 times. And otherwise, fail gracefully with a log that where the user can see that the transaction failed. In fact, I start to realize now that we more and more need to add things to the system. So we need to have a way where we can see system logs. We need to have peer-to-peer messaging. We have a whole bunch of things we should have. Okay, so a add to yes. So the feature, how should that work in the UI? Should there be yes. One yes. Two separate favorites tab in the wallet selection along with nearby yes. Three, the ability to yes. This is the hard part of the job. Just answering yes to everything. Should the favorites be persisted? I assume they should be saved locally. Yes, this is actually a really good point. I haven't really thought of that, but yes, they should be persisted. And also we need the wallet private key to be persisted. We want it such that we can specify that on startup. So we can specify where the wallet file is on startup. A value. So the idea here is that we're going to start up multiple clients to test this functionality. And so what we really want is the ability to specify different places so we can start up 2 clients at the same time, then transfer funds and so on. Let's just go with that. Okay. For NPC specifically, do they have actual Rialo wallet addresses or are payments to NPC? No, they will have their own. They will have their own wallets. In fact, they should be much like normal players. Independent entities can run as separate I'm just making this up. This seems like a good idea at the moment. I might change my mind about this, but the idea here would be that we actually start creating NCPs that are acting exactly the way that humans are joining the game. So you start up a process, and that starts an NPC in its own right that has its own wallet. It can walk around and it can do stuff. A simple success message. Yes, a simple success message. And then refresh of balance. Also add transactions to history. Okay. Regarding the Rialo transaction, the current Rialo, do you know if this version supports sending transactions, or you need to upgrade? No. Should work with version 0.11. One last question on the API side for proximity-based address discovery. The server needs to know each player's wallet address. Should this be sent by the client when connecting to the server? Part of the player's profile identity on the server? Only shared on demand when a player opens a nearby list. This is a tough question. I feel like the privacy aspect of this would be option free, but I also feel like baking this into its identity and then saying if you want private funds, you should really move it somewhere else. Let's just go with, okay, this should be part of the players or NPCs, NCP profile. Oh, NPC. Okay, so we know this drill very well by now. At this point, it will just go ahead and take all the answers we've given it and start create documentation about what we're doing here. And hopefully we'll get a nice set of requirements with design documents and test cases and all of this, such that we can just tell it to go ahead and implement it. And you see it starts creating the requirements as it's supposed to. And if we go back here, we should now see that the backlog is growing in size. So we now have 30 elements in the backlog. And we click on the different backlog items here. Server design, server browser. I don't think. Let's try to go down to some of the more recent. Provide nearby wallet. You see it specifies who are the actors, the preconditions, the main flow. All of this is nicely specified. And we could now, if we wanted to, sit down and really read all of these system documents to understand what it's trying to do. I feel a bit too lazy to do that for this very short demonstration, but I think what we'll do is what we've done the other times as well. We'll just accept all of this and then ask it to go ahead and implement it. And then we'll come back on Wednesday to see what it did. And so the reason for that is I don't have time to do a live stream tomorrow, but on Wednesday we'll go on with day 9 and then look at what it has built out in the hope that it's built something sensible for us. And so with that said, I think we're just going to leave it here and create all the artifacts and then start on the work afterwards. And then I will see you all on Wednesday. And hopefully at that point, we can do player-to-player transfers. And I think that's going to be super exciting because that will be the first step for everything else. right? Once you have player-to-player transfers, we can now start setting up video calls that are paid for. We can set up travel costs. We can do a whole bunch of things that's going to be super exciting. And then we need to look at the networking bit. The fact that it's using a custom UDP protocol, I'm not sure how happy I am with that. So that seems like something we need to revise. And we haven't really used the ACE framework a lot for revising things. So the question is this going to work or is it not going to work? I hope it is. That would be great. And hopefully you see by now, this is not completely as autonomous as you would expect from the Singularity, but I think we're still getting pretty far without having to do any serious effort. And on top of that, the project is quite well documented. So you can go to the browser and go through all of the design documents and get an idea what actually happened in the system. What were the design criteria? What were the requirements that made that we ended up with this particular design? And that has the huge benefit that because we have this track record of everything that has happened, we don't suffer the memory loss that you otherwise often get with LLMs. So you saw just how easy I started out by telling it, familiarize yourself with the project, and it actually read all of the specs it had created previously. So we've done none of that. That's all coming out from just interviewing us. And because of that, it's very, very easy for the LLM to understand what are we doing here. And it's very easy for us to sit down and understand what are we doing here. We can then look at the specifications first, and then move on to looking at the tests, and then finally dive into the code if we want to have a really deep understanding what's going on. But I think this is a great first way of working and a great way of showing this concept of specs are king in 2026, not code. Code belongs to the old age. Specs is the new way we're going to go around these things. With that said, I hope you enjoyed the live stream. If you did, leave a comment, send me a message. I'm more than happy to hear from you, and see you next time.